Okay. Well, we are here. We're going to finish We. This is the conclusion of We. It'll be the last four chapters or records for that matter of We. Record 36, Empty Pages, The Christian God About My Mother. It is very strange that a kind of empty white page should be left in my hand. How I walked there, how I waited. I remember I had to wait. I know nothing about it. I remember not a sound, not a face, not a gesture, as if all communicating wires between me and the world were cut. When I came to, I found myself standing before him. I was afraid to raise my eyes. I saw only the enormous cast iron hands upon his knees. Those hands weighed upon him, bending his knees with their weight. He was slowly moving his fingers. His face was somewhere above, as if in a fog. And only because his voice came to my ears from such a height, it did not roar like thunder, it did not deafen me, but appeared to be an ordinary human voice. Then you, to you, the then you too, you, the builder of the integral, you whose lot it was to become the greatest of all conquistadors, you whose name was to have been at the head of a glorious new chapter in the history of the United States, you. Blood ran to my head, to my cheeks, and here again a white page, only the pulsation in my temples and the heavy voice from above. But I remember not a word. Only when he became silent, I came to and noticed how his hand moved heavily like 1,000 pounds and crawled slowly. His finger threatened me. Well, why are you silent? Is it true or not? Executioner? So? So, I repeated submissively, and then I heard clearly every one of his words. Well, then, do you think I am afraid of the word? Did you ever try to take off its shell and look into its inner meaning? I shall tell you. Remember a blue hill, a crowd, a cross? Some up on the hill, sprinkled with blood, are busy nailing a body to the cross. Others below, sprinkled with tears, are gazing upward. Does it not occur to you that the part which those above must play is the more difficult, the more important part? If it were not for them, how could that magnificent tragedy ever have been staged? True, they were hissed by the dark crowd, but for that, the author of the tragedy, God, should have remu- remunerated them the more liberally, should he not? And the most clement Christian God himself, who burned all the infidels on a slow fire, is he not an executioner? Was the number of those burned by the Christians less than the number of burned Christians? Yet, you must understand this, yet this God was for centuries glorified as the God of love. Absurd? Oh no, just the contrary. It is instead a testament to the imperishable wisdom of man written in blood. Even at the time when he still was wild and hairy, man knew that real algebraic love for humanity must inevitably be inhuman, and that the inevitable mark of truth is cruelty, just as the inevitable mark of fire is its property of causing the sensation of burning. Could you show me a fire that would not hurt? Well, now prove your point. Proceed. Argue. How could I argue? How could I argue when those thoughts were once mine, though I was never able to redress them in such a splendid tempered armor? I remained silent. If your silence is intended to mean that you agree with me, then let us talk as adults do after the children have gone to bed. Let us talk to the logical end. I ask, what was it that man from his diaper age dreamed of, tormented himself for, prayed for? He longed for that day when someone would tell him what happiness is and then would chain him to it. What else are we doing now? The ancient dream about a paradise. Remember, there is no paradise. They know no desires anymore, no pity, no love. There they are, all blessed. An operation has been performed upon their center of fancy. That is why they are blessed angels, servants of God. And now, at the very moment when we have caught up with that dream, when we hold it like this, he clenched his hand so hard that if he had held a stone in it, sap would have run out. At the moment when all that was left for us was to adorn our prize and distribute it among all in equal pieces, at that very moment, you, the cast iron roar was suddenly broken off. I was as red as a piece of iron on an anvil under the molding sledgehammer. The hammer seemed to have stopped for a second, hanging in the air, and I waited, until suddenly, how old are you? 32. Just double the age, and as simple as at 16. Listen, is it possible that it really never occurred to you that we do not know their names, but I am certain you will disclose them to us, that they were interested in you only as the builder of the integral, only in order to be able, through the use of you? Don't, don't, I cried. But it was like protecting yourself with your hands and crying to a bullet. You may still be hearing your own don't, but meanwhile the bullet has burned you through, and writhing with pain, you are prostrated on the ground. Yes, yes, the builder of the integral. Yes, yes. At once there came back to me the angry face of you with twitching brick red gills on that morning when both of them. I remember now clearly how I raised my eyes and laughed. A Socrates like bald headed man was sitting before me, and small drops of sweat dotted the bald surface of his head. How simple, how magnificently trivial everything was. How simple, almost to the point of being ridiculous. Laughter was choking me and bursting forth in puffs. I covered my mouth with my hand and rushed wildly out. Steps, wind, damp, leaping fragments of light and faces. And while running, no, only to see her once more. Here again, an empty white page. All I remember is feet, not people, just feet, hundreds of feet, confusedly stamping feet, falling from somewhere in the pavement, a heavy rain of feet, in some cheerful, daring voice, and a shout that was probably for me. Hey, hey, come here, come along with us. Afterward, a deserted square heavily overloaded with tense wind. In the middle of the square, a dim, heavy, threatening mass, the machine of the well-doer. And a seemingly unexpected image arose within me in response to the sight of the machine, a snow-white pillow, and on that pillow a head thrown back and half-closed eyes, and a sharp, sweet line of teeth. All this seems so absurdly, so terribly connected with the machine. I know how this connection has come about, but I do not yet want to see it nor to say it aloud. I don't want to. I don't. I closed my eyes and sat down on the steps which led upward to the machine. I must have been running hard, for my face was wet. From somewhere far away cries were coming, but nobody heard them. Nobody heard me crying. Save me from it. Save me. If only I had a mother as the ancients had, my mother, mine, for whom I should be not the builder of the integral, and not D530, not a molecule of the United States, but merely a living human piece, a piece of herself, a trampled, smothered, cast off piece. And though I were driving the nails into the cross or being nailed to it, perhaps it is the same, she would hear what no one else could hear, her old, grown together, wrinkled lips. Record 37. Infusorian, Doomsday, her room. This morning, while we were in the refectory, my neighbor to my left whispered to me in a frightened tone, "But why don't you eat? Don't you see? They are looking at you." I had to pluck up all my strength to show a smile. I felt it like a crack in my face. I smiled, and the borders of the crack drew apart wider and wider. It was quite painful. And then, no sooner had I lifted the small cube of paste upon my fork than the fork jerked from my hand and tinkled against the plate. And at once the tables, the walls, the plates, even the air trembled and rang. Outside, too, an enormous iron round roar reaching the sky. Floating over heads and houses, it died away in the distance in small, hardly perceptible circles like those upon water. I saw faces instantaneously grow faded and bleached. I saw mouths filled with food suddenly motionless and forks hanging in air. Then everything became confused, jumped off the centuries old tracks. Everybody jumped up from his place without singing the hymn, and confusedly in disorder, hastily finishing chewing, choking, grasping one another, they were asking, what happened? What? And the disorderly fragments of the machine, which was once perfect and great, fell down in all directions, down the elevators, down the stairs, stamping of feet, Pieces of words like pieces of torn letters carried by the wind. The same outpour from the neighboring house. A minute later, the avenue seemed like a drop of water seen under a microscope. The infusoria, locked up in the transparent glass like drop of water, were tossing around from side to side, up and down. Ah, someone's triumphant voice. I saw the back of a neck and a finger pointing to the sky. I remember very distinctly a yellowish pinkish nail, and under the nail a crescent crawling out as if from under the horizon. The finger was like a compass. All eyes were raised to the sky. There, running away from invisible pursuit, masses of cloud were rushing upon each other, colored by the clouds. The arrows of the guardians were floating with their tube-like antennae. And further to the west, something like, at first nobody could understand what it was, even I, who knew, unfortunately, more than the others. It was like a great hive of black arrows swarming somewhere at an extraordinary height. They looked like hardly noticeable, swiftly moving points. Nearer and nearer, hoarse, guttural sounds began to reach the earth, and finally we saw birds just over our heads. They filled the sky with their sharp, black, descending triangles. The furious wind drove them down, and they began to land on the cupolas, on the roofs, poles, and balconies. Ah, ah, and the triumphant back of the neck turned. Again I saw that man with the protruding forehead, but it seemed that the name, so to speak, was all that was left of him. He seemed to have crawled out from under his forehead, and on his face, around the eyes and lips, bunches of rays were growing. Through the noise of the wind and the wings and the cawing, he cried to me, "Do you realize? Do you realize? They have blown up the wall. The wall has been blown up. Do you understand?" Somewhere in the background, excuse me. Somewhere in the background, figures with their heads drawn in were hastily rushing by and into the houses. In the middle of the pavements was a mass of those who had already been operated upon. They moved toward the west, hairy bunches of rays around the lips and eyes. I grasped his hands. "Tell me, where is she? Where is I 330? There, beyond the wall, or I must, do you hear me? At once. I cannot." "Here," he shouted in a happy, drunken voice, showing strong yellow teeth. "Here in town, and she is acting. Oh, we are doing great work." Who are those we? Who am I? There were about 50 around him. Like him, they seemed to have crawled out from under their foreheads. They were loud, cheerful, strong toothed, swallowing the stormy wind. With their simple, not at all terrible looking electrocutors, where did they get them? They started to the west, toward the operated ones, encircling them, keeping parallel to Avenue 48. Stumbling against the tightly drawn ropes woven by the wind, I was running to her. What for? I did not know. I was stumbling, empty streets. The city seemed foreign, wild, filled with the ceaseless, triumphant hubbub of the birds. It seemed like the end of the world, doomsday. Through the glass of the walls in quite a few houses, this cut into my mind. I saw male and female, numbers in shameless embraces, without curtains lowered, without pink checks, in the middle of the day. The house, her house, the door ajar, the lobby, the control desk, all were empty. The elevator had stopped in the middle of its shaft. I ran panting up the endless stairs. The corridor, like the spokes of a wheel, figures on the door dashed past my eyes. 320, 326, 330, I 330. Through the glass wall, I could see everything in her room, upside down, confused, creased. The table overturned, its legs in the air like a beast. The bed absurdly placed away from the wall, obliquely. Strewn over the floor, fallen trodden petals of pink checks. I bent over and picked up one, two, three of them. All bore the name D503. I was on all of them. Drops of myself, of my molten, poured out self. And that was all that was left. Somehow I felt they should not lie there on the floor and be trodden upon. I gathered a handful of them, put them on the table, and carefully smoothed them out, glanced at them, and laughed aloud. I never knew it before, but now I know. And you too know that laughter may be of different colors. Laughter is but a distant echo of an explosion within us, and maybe the echo of a holiday, red, blue, and golden fireworks, or at times it may represent pieces of human flesh exploded into the air. I noticed an unfamiliar name on some of the pink checks. I do not remember the figures, but I do remember the letter F. I brushed the stubs from the table to the floor, stepped on them, on myself, stamped on them with my heels, and went out. In the corridor, I sat on the windowsill in front of her door and waited long and stupidly. An old man appeared. His face was like a pierced, empty bladder with folds. From beneath the puncture, something transparent was still slowly dripping. Slowly, vaguely, I realized tears. And only when the old man was quite far off, I came to and exclaimed, "Please, listen. Do you know number I-330?" The old man turned around, waved his hand in despair, and stumbled farther away. I returned home at dusk. On the west side, the sky was twitching every second in a pale blue, electric convulsion. A subdued, heavy roar could be heard from that direction. The roofs were covered with black charred sticks. Birds. I lay down, and instantly, like a heavy beast, sleep came and stifled me. Record 38. I don't know what title. Perhaps the whole synopsis may be called A Cast Off Cigarette Butt. I awoke, a bright glare painful to look at. I half closed my eyes. My head seemed filled with some caustic blue smoke. Everything was enveloped in fog and through the fog, but I did not turn on the light. Then how is it? I jumped up. At the table, leaning her chin on her hand and smiling, sat I-330 looking at me. She was at the very table at which I am now writing. Those 10 or 15 minutes are already well behind me, cruelly twisted into a very firm spring. Yet it seems to me that the door closed after her only a second ago, and that I could still overtake her and grasp her hand, and that she might laugh out and say, I-330 was at the table. I rushed toward her. I saw your room. I thought you, but midway I hurt myself upon the sharp, motionless spears of her eyelashes, and I stopped. I remembered she had looked at me in the same way before in the integral. I felt I had to tell her everything in one split second, and in such a way that she would surely believe, or she would never. Listen, I-330, everything. No, no, one moment. Let me have a glass of water first. My mouth was as dry as if it were lined with blotting paper. I poured a glass of water, but I couldn't. I put the glass back upon the table and with both hands firmly grasped the carafe. Now I noticed that the blue smoke came from a cigarette. She brought the cigarette to her lips and eagerly drew in and swallowed the smoke as I did water. Then she said, Don't. Be silent. Don't you see it matters very little? I came anyway. They are waiting for me below. Do you want these minutes, which are our last? Abruptly, she threw the cigarette on the floor and bent backward over the side of the chair to reach the button in the wall. It was quite difficult to do, and I remember how the chair swayed slightly, how two of its legs were lifted. Then the curtains fell. She came close to me and embraced me. Her knees through her dress were like a slow, gentle, warm, enveloping and permeating poison. Suddenly, it happens at times, you plunge into sweet, warm sleep, when all at once, as if something pricks you, you tremble and your eyes are again widely open. So it was now, there on the floor in her room, were the pink checks stamped with traces of footsteps. Some of them bore the letter F, and some figures. Plus and minus fused within my mind into one lump. I could not say even now what sort of feeling it was, but I crushed her so that she cried out with pain. One more minute out of those 10 or 15, her head thrown back, lying on the bright white pillow, her eyes half closed, a sharp, sweet line of teeth. And all this reminded me in an irresistible, absurd, torturing way about something forbidden, something not permissible at that moment. More tenderly, more cruelly, I pressed her to myself. Brighter grew the blue traces of my fingers. She said without opening her eyes, I noticed this. They say you went to see the well-doer yesterday. Is it true? Yes. Then her eyes opened widely, and with delight I looked at her and saw that her face grew quickly paler and paler, that it effaced itself, disappearing, only the eyes remained. I told her everything, only for some reason why I don't know. No, that's not true. I know the reason. I was silent about one thing. His assertion at the end that they needed me only in order. Like the image on a photographic plate in a developing fluid, her face gradually reappeared. The cheeks, the white line of teeth, the lips. She stood up and went to the mirror door of the closet. My mouth was dry again. I poured water, but it was revolting to drink it. I put the glass back on the table and asked, Did you come to see me because you wanted to inquire? A sharp, mocking triangle of brows drawn to the temples looked at me from the mirror. She turned around to say something, but said nothing. It was not necessary. I knew. To bid her goodbye, I moved my foreign limbs, struck the chair with them. It felt upside down, dead, like the table in her room. Her lips were cold, just as cold was once the floor, here near my bed. When she left, I sat down on the floor, bent over the cigarette butt. I cannot write anymore. I no longer want to. Record 39, the end. All this was like the last crystal of salt thrown into a saturated solution. Quickly, needle like crystals began to appear, to grow more substantial and solid. It was all clear to me. The decision was made, and tomorrow morning I shall do it. It amounts to suicide, but perhaps then I shall be reborn, for only what is killed can be reborn. Every second the sky twitched convulsively there in the west. My head was burning and pulsating inside. I was up all night, and I fell asleep only at about 7 o'clock in the morning, when the darkness of the night was already dispelled and becoming gray, and the roofs crowded with birds became visible. I woke up 10 o'clock. Evidently the bell did not ring today. On the table left from yesterday stood the glass of water. I gulped the water eagerly and I ran. I had to do it quickly, as quickly as possible. The sky was deserted, blue, all eaten up by the storm. Sharp corners of shadows. Everything seemed to be cut out of blue autumnal air, thin, dangerous to the touch. It seemed so brittle, ready to disperse into glass dust. Within me, something similar. I must not think. It was dangerous to think. For and I did not think. Perhaps I did not even see properly. I only registered impressions. There on the pavement, thrown from somewhere, branches were strewn. Their leaves were green, amber, and cherry red. Above, crossing each other, birds and arrows were tossing about. Here, below heads, open mouths, hands, waving branches. All this must have been shouting, buzzing, chirping. Then streets empty as if swept by a plague. I remember I stumbled over something disgustingly soft, yielding yet motionless. I bent down, a corpse. It was lying flat, the legs apart, the face. I recognized the thick Negro lips, which even now seemed to sprinkle with laughter. His eyes firmly screwed in, laughed into my face. 1 second, I stepped over him and ran. I could no longer. I had to have everything done as soon as possible, or else I felt I would snap. I would break in two like an overloaded sail. Luckily, it was not more than 20 steps away. I already saw the sign with the golden letters, the Bureau of Guardians. At the door, I stopped for a moment to gulp down as much air as I could, and I stepped in. Inside, in the corridor, stood an endless chain of numbers, holding small sheets of paper and heavy notebooks. They moved slowly, advancing a step or two and stopping again. I began to be tossed about along the chain. My head was breaking into pieces. I pulled them by the sleeves. I implored them as a sick man implores to be given something that would, even at the price of sharpest pain, end everything forever. A woman with a belt tightly clasped around her waist and with two distinctly protruding squatty hemispheres tossing about as if she had eyes on them, chuckled at me. He has a bellyache. Show him to the room, second door to the right. Everybody laughed, and because of the laughter, something rose in my throat. I felt I would either scream or suddenly from behind me someone touched my elbow. I turned around, transparent wing ears, but they were not pink as usual. They were purplish red. His Adam's apple was tossing about as though ready to tear the covering. Quickly boring into me. What are you here for? I seized him. Quickly, please, quickly, into your office. I must tell everything. Right away. I am glad that it may be terrible that it should be you to whom, but it is good. It is good. He too knew her. This made it even more tormenting for me. But perhaps he too would tremble when he heard, and we would both be killing, and I would not be alone at that, my supreme second. The door closed with a slam. I remember a piece of paper was caught beneath the door, and it rustled on the floor when the door closed. And then a strange, airless silence covered us as if a glass bell had been put over us. If only he had uttered a single, most insignificant word, no matter what, I would have told him everything at once, but he was silent. So keyed up that I heard a noise in my ears, I said without looking at him. I think I always hated her from the very beginning. I struggled, or no, no, don't believe me. I could have, but I did not want to save myself. I wanted to perish. This was dearer to me than anything else. And even now, even this minute when I already know everything, do you know that I was summoned to the well doer? Yes, I do. Well, what he told me, please realize that it was equivalent to, it was as if someone should remove the floor from under you this minute, and you and everything here on the desk, the papers, the ink would splash out and cover everything with blots. What else? What further? Hurry up. Others are waiting. Then stumbling, muttering, I told him everything that is recorded in these pages about my real self and about my hairy self and about my hands. Yes, exactly. That was the beginning. And how I lied to myself and how she obtained false certificates for me and how I grew worse and worse every day and about the long corridors underground and there beyond the wall. All this I threw out in formless pieces and lumps. I would stutter and fail to find words. The lips double curved and a smile would prompt me with the word I needed, and I would nod gratefully. Yes, yes. Suddenly, what was it? He was talking for me, and I only listened and nodded. Yes, yes. And then, yes, exactly so. Yes, yes. I felt cold around my mouth as though it were wet with ether, and I asked with difficulty, but how is it you could not learn anywhere? He smiled a smile growing more and more curved. Then, but I see that you do not but I see that you do want to conceal something from me. For example, you enumerated everything you saw beyond the wall, but you failed to mention one thing. You deny it, but don't you remember that once, just in passing, just for a second, you saw me there? Yes, yes, me. Silence. Suddenly, like a flash of lightning, it became shamelessly clear to me. He too, and everything about myself, my torment, all that I had brought here, crushed by the burden, plucking up my last strength as if performing a great feat, all appeared to me only funny, like the ancient anecdote about Abraham and Isaac. Abraham all in a cold sweat with the knife already raised over his son, over himself, and suddenly a voice from above. Never mind, I was only joking. Without taking my eyes from the smile that grew more and more curved, I put my hands on the edge of the desk and slowly, very slowly, pushed myself with my chair away from him. Then, instantly gathering myself into my own hands, I dashed madly out, past loud voices, past steps and mouths. I do not remember how I got into one of the public restrooms in a station of the Underground Railway. Above, everything was perishing. The greatest civilization, the most rational in human history, was crumbling. But here, by some irony, everything remained as before, beautiful. The walls shone, water murmured cozily, and like the water, the unseen, transparent music. Only think of it. All this is doomed. All this will be covered with grass some day. Only myths will remain. I moaned aloud. At the same instant, I felt someone gently patting my knee. It was from the left. It was my neighbor who occupied a seat on my left. An enormous forehead, a bald parabola, yellow, unintelligible lines of wrinkles on his forehead. Those lines about me. I understand you. I understand completely, he said. Yet you must calm yourself. You must. It will return. It will inevitably return. It is only important that everybody should learn of my discovery. You are the first to whom I talk about it. I have calculated that there is no infinity. No. I looked at him wildly. Yes, yes, I tell you so. There is no infinity. If the universe is infinite, then the average density of matter must equal zero. But since we know it is not zero, therefore the universe is finite. It is spherical in form, and the square of its radius, R2, is equal to the average density multiplied by. The only thing left is to calculate the numerical coefficient, and then, do you realize what it means? It means that everything is final, everything is simple. But you, my honored sir, you disturb me. You prevent my finishing my calculations by your yelling. I do not know which shattered me more, his discovery or his positiveness at that apocalyptic hour. Only then did I notice that he had a notebook in his hands and a logarithmic dial. I understood then that even if everything was perishing, it was my duty, before you, my unknown and beloved, to leave these records in a finished form. I asked him to give me some paper, and here in the restroom, to the accompaniment of the quiet music, transparent like water, I wrote down these last lines. I was about to put down a period as the ancients would put a cross over the calves into which they used to throw their dead. Oh, put a cross over the caves into which they used to throw their dead. My bad. When all of a sudden my pencil trembled and fell from between my fingers. Listen, I pulled my neighbor. Yes, listen, I say. There, where your finite universe ends. What is there? What? He had no time to answer. From above, down the steps, stamping. Record 40. Facts. The bell, I am certain. Daylight, it is clear. The barometer, 760 millimeters. Is it possible that ID 503 really wrote these pages? Uh, is it possible that I ever felt or imagined I felt all this? The handwriting is mine, and what follows is all in my handwriting. Fortunately, only the handwriting. No more delirium, no absurd metaphors, no feelings, only facts. For I am healthy, perfectly, absolutely healthy. I am smiling. I cannot help smiling. A splinter has been taken out of my head, and I feel so light, so empty. To be more exact, not empty, but there is nothing foreign, nothing that prevents me from smiling. Smiling is the normal state for a normal human being. The facts are as follows. That evening, my neighbor who discovered the finiteness of the universe and I and all others who did not have certificates showing that we had been operated on, all of us were taken to the nearest auditorium. For some reason, the number of the auditorium, 112, seemed familiar to me. There they tied us to the tables and performed the great operation. Next day, I, D503, appeared before the well-doer and told him everything known to me about the enemies of happiness. Why before it had seemed hard for me to go, I cannot understand. The only explanation seems to be my illness, my soul. That same evening, sitting at the table with him, with the well doer, I saw for the first time in my life the famous gas chamber. They brought in that woman. She was to testify in my presence. She remained stubbornly silent and smiling. I noticed that she had sharp and very white teeth, which were very pretty. Then she was brought under the bell. Her face became very white, and as her eyes were large and dark, all was very pretty. When they began pumping the air from under the bell, she threw her head back and half closed her eyes. Her lips were pressed together. This reminded me of something. She looked at me, holding the arms of the chair firmly. She continued to look until her eyes closed. Then she was taken out and brought back to consciousness by means of electrodes, and again she was put under the bell. The procedure was repeated 3 times, yet she did not utter a word. The others who were brought in with that woman proved to be more honest. Many of them began to speak after the first trial. Tomorrow they will all ascend to the steps of the machine of the well doer. No postponement is possible, for there still is chaos, groaning, cadavers, beasts in the western section, and to our regret, there are still quantities of numbers who have betrayed reason. But on the transverse Avenue 40, we have succeeded in establishing a temporary wall of high voltage waves, and I hope we win. More than that, I am certain we shall win, for reason must prevail. Okay, there you go. That is we. We have done it. We have finished we, all the way home.